Ladies and gentlemen, it's go time, and we've got the coach to turn your potential into performance. John Brubaker is a nationally renowned performance consultant, championship coach, world record holder, and highly sought-after speaker. More importantly, Coach Bru is a husband and father. He has earned his place as an award-winning author of 3 books on leadership performance, and his book Seeds of Success is in the process of becoming a major motion picture. John and his books have been featured on NBC News, Forbes, ESPN Radio, The Huffington Post, and Entrepreneur Magazine. Coach Bru works with some of the world's top executives, coaches, and athletes, helping them to achieve peak performance by mastering the mental game of business. This allows them to perform their best when it matters most. John's clients include corporations, associations, universities, nonprofits, and top-performing entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up now, put your hands together, and welcome Mr. John Brubaker.
Auburn, if you can hear me, clap your hands once. Clap your hands twice. 3 times. Fired up to be here with you today. What I'd like to do, I appreciate the round of applause, but what I'd like to do is I want to earn a round of applause from you. And there's a group of people here today who have already earned a standing ovation from you. So what I'd like you to do is, if you're a law enforcement official and you're in this room, that includes the cadets who aspire to become police officers, I'd like you to stand up for a moment, please. Everyone in law enforcement, Liz, that includes you. Talk about being powered by purpose. That's the reason why we're all here, right? It's because of them and their commitment to this community and to growing leaders. The mark of a great leader is they grow other leaders. And if we're going to talk about being powered by purpose, I feel compelled to share with you what being powered by purpose first doesn't look like. Fair enough? Now, you've all been PowerPointed to death today, and there's more to come later. So right here, this is my PowerPoint. Cool? Good. So I spent 12 years as a college lacrosse coach before I embarked on this entrepreneurial journey, become a speaker, executive coach, and author. And I was coached at the small college level, kind of the back roads of collegiate athletics. Coached at a little Division II school. My final coaching stop, St. Andrews University. I inherited a team that never had a winning season, and with smallest roster in our league, less scholarship money than everybody else. We're the underdogs. And in 2002, we really maximized our potential. I had a group of committed leaders, 8 seniors on the team, and we maximized our potential. We went to the NCAA Final Four, led for 3 quarters, couldn't win a face-off in the 4th quarter, lost to the eventual national champs, Limestone College. And something happened after the season. So business owners, you'll appreciate this. You're in the business of recruitment. You recruit talent. You recruit customers. Coaches are in the business of recruitment. So what happens when you have no track record of success, no history or tradition to sell, and then all of a sudden you have a great season, you're in the media's eye, you have a lot of attention. That enables you to attract better talent in terms of recruiting the next class athletes than you ever could before. So we found ourselves in a unique position. We're getting in the living rooms of some families, some really talented athletes we never had access to before. And we're excited. My assistant coach and I, a little fire plug, blonde, curly hair, Jeff Groskowski, we're sitting in the office in the beginning of the summer after the season ended, and we're just trying to map out our game plan, where we're going to go that summer, who we're going to visit, who we'd recruit. And secretary knocks on the door. Now picture This is Laurinburg, North Carolina. Picture like your stereotypical Southern belle. Her name's Millie English. So Millie knocks on the door. Coach Brubaker, y'all have a phone call? Now, anybody here from the South or visit the South at all? If your hands. So you know what I'm talking about. Y'all, singular, right? What's the plural of y'all? All y'all. All y'all. So y'all have a phone call. I said, great, Millie, who is it? She says, ESPN. I'm like, ESPN? It's like the town psychic? What are you talking about? She said, you know, them TV people. So for us, like a small town, small college environment, TV people is the public access channel showing up at one of your games that has like a little satellite dish on the back of the guy's pickup. So ESPN, I'm like, wow, that's great. Transfer the call. So as she's walking back to her desk to transfer the call, my assistant, Jeff, looks at me. He's like, points at the phone. He's like, this is one of those media requests you let me field, right? Because like I'm trying to grow a potential leader. I'm mentoring. And from time to time, I'd let him handle local media requests after a game, talk to local newspaper, kind of groom him for being a leader. I said, no, Jeff, sit back, take some notes, learn from the master, right? So Millie transfers the call in. I let it ring like 4 or 5 times so I didn't seem too desperate or eager, right? Answer the phone. This is Coach. I'll never forget this guy as long as I live. Richard. So Richard's on the other end of the line. Coach Brubaker, this is Richard calling from ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut. How are you today? So what do you think I'm thinking? I wonder who Richard's going to put on to interview me. Is it Sports Center? So this is back in '02. It's like Roy Firestone did those fireside chats. Maybe it's Roy. Maybe it's those Mike and Mike guys that do the morning show. And then I start wondering, like, what's he going to ask me? How'd you create this rise to national prominence? And a million other thoughts are going through my head. So Richard says, Coach Brubaker, I just have one question for you. So I look at my assistant. I'm like, watch this. I said, Richard, you can ask me more than one question. Our program, the university, my coaching career, my staff, we're an open book. Take all the time you need. Richard, that's great, Coach. I appreciate that. Approximately a year ago, we sent you a complimentary subscription to ESPN, the magazine. That's expired. Would you like to renew? Thank God I didn't have Richard on speakerphone. So I'm looking at Jeff, and he's looking at me. He's like, watch this. Richard, if it ain't Mike and Mike or Chris Berman, we're not interested, pal. I hung up. And Jeff's sitting there looking at me like, you should let me take the call. What are you doing? You hung up on? Like, yeah. So I said, Jeff, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to step out of the office for a minute. Step out of the office. He's just awestruck. I walk through the lobby, past Millie's desk. She's like, you done already with them TV people? I said, yep. I walk out of the lobby. I walk out of the field house. I think I actually, when I left the building, I think I left and I lost my mind. And I'm just walking around the building thinking to myself, that's not leadership. That's not being powered by purpose. That's being powered by ego. And what we did, as great as it was, that was last year. I think we're all in this story to a certain extent. Because some of you had very successful years last year, correct? You can just not raise your hand in the air, but just raise it internally. You probably have a lot to celebrate, right? Without honking your own horn. I just got to thinking, that's not leadership. That's not being powered by purpose. So I think we are all either a great example or a great cautionary tale. So that's my cautionary tale for you. But what's fascinating about that is sort of how we arrived at that position. When I took over the team that prior season, my players complained. They complained that it was a long walk from the locker room, around the field house, around another building on campus to get to the practice field. It's hot. It's a long walk. Your scholarship college athletes complaining about a walk when you're about to run around in a field in 110-degree heat for 2 hours? Really? But I wanted to be accommodating to them, and that's kind of the key word. So I said, you know what? Instead of walking around this building called the Burris Center, tell you what, I can give you a shortcut. We'll hack that, guys, because everyone's looking for a shortcut, right? Everyone's looking for a shortcut. So you can walk through the Burris Center. Because I don't want you to be like too tired or too hot. Okay? We wouldn't want that, right? So we're going to have an intervention. Felt like Oprah. So the Burris Center, and the cool thing about where I coach, was St. Andrews University built in a completely accessible campus well before the American Disabilities Act was even a thought. So the Burris Center was an entire facility devoted to physically disabled students. Talk about accommodations. It's the most accommodating place you'll ever find. And, the lights that just trip as soon as you walk or wheel yourself into the room, accessible seating. It was an amazing place. Doors that just open, everything's ramped. So what my players got, and I think this is what helps all of us, and we're all in this story, what helps us to be powered by purpose is to have perspective. So if they're going to complain about heat and having to run around or a long walk, let's take that walk directly through the Burris Center where you get to meet people who would literally give their right arm to be able to get up out of that chair and run around for 2 hours and do sprints in 110-degree heat. You don't have to practice. You don't have to take a long walk. You get to. So you talk about being powered by purpose. The only thing better than get to is want to. So what we found when they started doing that shortcut walking through the building is my players had a little more endurance during practice. They had a little bit better perspective when it was really hot, and they thought they might get tired. What we also found was a young man by the name of Andrew, who was a student in Burris Center, and he's an amazing writer. He was in one of my classes I taught, and was just a statistical genius. He's confined to a wheelchair. He had cerebral palsy. And I said to Andrew one day, because he used to come by and watch practice in the beginning of the year, I said, Andrew, you seem to have some free time in the afternoons. Why don't you join the team? So he said, well, what would I do? You're a great writer. You use a keyboard with a joystick on his chair. And I said, you just have a knack for crunching numbers. You could be our manager. You could be our statistician. You're going to be really a member of the coaching staff. You're going to travel with us, come to practice, games. You can do it all. I'll give you a spot in the office. He didn't really want a spot in the office, but he loved every minute of joining us every single day. And I looked at Andrew, and as we went to the NCAA Final Four, finished ranked third in the country, and just maximized our potential. I swear it was Andrew. He was worth 3 or 4 goals a game. He was our home field advantage because he gave us perspective. And he really was, you talk about the power of purpose, we talk about fuel and glue. He was both. He was both for us. And a fascinating thing happened. Let's fast forward 3 years. Andrew's with us every single day. traveling with us, part of the team. And he's at the awards dinner. You know, our players get jackets and shirts and shorts and gear. He gets the jacket, the shirt, the shorts, and the gear. He's one of us. He graduates May 2004. My phone rings. It wasn't Richard. It's Andrew's dad. Andrew is a pretty quiet kid, tend to keep to himself. He's an introvert. So his dad calls me up right after graduation. He said, Coach Brubaker, he said, I just wanted to call and thank you. I'm like, thank me? For what? He said, we went out for graduation dinner, and my wife and I asked Andrew what the highlight of his college career was. He said it was being on the lacrosse team. And I get choked up just thinking about that, because here's a kid that was never visibly, outwardly demonstrating that to us. But he said it to his family over dinner. The highlight of his experience wasn't graduating from college when no one thought he would, when St. Andrews wasn't his first school, if you know what I mean. It was being a member of the team. And I think we all have a desire to be a member of a team, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And I was thunderstruck when I heard that, because it was the first time I heard it in 3 years. I didn't hear it from him. And oftentimes as an educator, you are looked at by some members of your community, whether you're a teacher or coach, as being, and I hate these two words, just a. And those two words bothered me, like, to my core more than anything. When I'd hear from the faculty, oh, he's just a coach. Like, all you do is blow a whistle and roll a ball out and watch kids run. And you're just a coach. And sometimes teachers are looked at as being just a teacher, when we all know we're way more than that. But if you hear that messaging enough, you start to believe it. And I know I started to believe it until that day when I got that phone call from Andrew's father. Like, you know what? I'm not just a coach. I did something that mattered that didn't show up on the scoreboard. And here's why it was really important for me to hear that. And I think it's important for everyone to hear that, you know, in your own world, in your own profession. Because we operate in an appreciation deficit society. We're so busy being busy. We're in a hurry. We don't like to share our feelings. Guys, that's not macho, right? To share our feelings, to break new emotional ground, right? So here's why I needed to hear that. You fast forward 3 years, and on June 14th, my athletic director walks in my office, says, John, you got a minute? I need to talk to you. I said, sure, Carl, come on in, have a seat. He said, no, that's okay, this won't take that long. What's up? He said, I just got done meeting with the president of the university. He said, we arrived at one conclusion. It's just one thing keeping us from winning a national championship in men's lacrosse. So again, me being like eternal optimist, I'm thinking, that's awesome. They're finally leveling the playing field for me. I'm either getting more scholarship money or I'm getting a full-time assistant, because I never had a full-time staff member. Maybe I'm getting both. And he said, President Deegan and I decided that one thing is you. Took a piece of paper out, passed it across my desk. He said, here you go. Little envelope. Coach, small college, your buyout's pretty small. And I was done. Fired for not winning a national championship. But here's what happened. It was June 14th, 2004, which is also my birthday. Happy birthday, you're fired, right? The irony of it is he was famous for remembering people's birthdays, having surprise parties, rolling out a big cake, calling an emergency staff meeting, having everybody sing to you, cards, present, the whole 9 yards. I didn't get a cake. I didn't get any gifts. I didn't get a happy birthday, but he sure gave me a present. I was burnt out. I had that appreciation deficit, and I needed to make a shift. I was burning the candle at both ends. I think a lot of you could probably relate to that. So sometimes that shift, we don't find it, it finds us. But I walked out of there with a cardboard box with my few belongings in it, with my head held high for one reason, because I wasn't just a. And I had somebody validate that, Andrew's father. So you want to be powered by purpose? You're not always going to realize the moments when they happen, because people aren't always going to tell you. But you have to trust that you really are contributing for a bigger purpose, right? It's like athletics, my former career, when I used to be just a coach, that's way bigger than wins and losses on the field, right? Like everything we do, it's way bigger than the business we think we may be in. And we just have to trust, because we're not getting that outward appreciation day in, day out, because that's not macho, right, guys? We have to trust that those moments are really happening, and we'll find out about it later. We're planting seeds that don't grow for years. If you're an educator and you're sitting in here, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You're planting seeds, you're watering it. You don't see any growth until years later. Maybe they don't even tell you, but they come back. Maybe some of your employees who leave, take another job, come back and thank you years later, and you never had that conversation with them while they were there. But little things make a big difference. And kind of bring this home for you and tie it all together, how you gotta trust that there's a higher purpose and little things really do make a big difference. I want to tie it into what the Auburn PAL does and the Auburn Police Department. In 1980, there's a woman named Linda Pauling, Phoenix, Arizona. 1972, her son was born. And the nurse handed her a baby and said, "Don't get too attached to him. He's not going to make it very long." And she said, "Oh, yes, he is." He had leukemia. Diagnosis was really grim. Grows up to 8 years old, overcomes the odds, makes it to age 8. He was in remission for a while, and then it came back. And his mother had a conversation with him. She said, "Chris, if you could grow up to be anything you wanted to be, what would you want to be when you grow up?" He said, "I'd want to be a police officer, Mom." She said, "Okay." Stores that in the back of her head. Next day, picks up the phone, calls the Arizona Highway Patrol in Phoenix, talks to a gentleman named Tom Austin. Says, "Officer Austin, my name's Linda Pauling. My son, Chris, has leukemia. I don't know how much time he has left, but he told me if he could grow up to be anything he wanted to be, he wants to be a police officer. You think you could do something special for him? Like just let him come over to the police headquarters and, do like a little show and tell with him. Let him follow you around for a little while and see what it's like." Police officer says, no, sorry. I'll do better than that. We're going to send a Ranger helicopter to the hospital in Phoenix, and we're going to pick Chris up tomorrow morning, so be ready. We're going to bring him to the police department. He will be met by a highway patrolman on a motorcycle and an officer in a car. Bring your family. So the mother comes, father comes, the doctor comes. And what do they find? Chris's vitals start improving when he finds this out. Terminal diagnosis. He doesn't have much time. His vitals start improving. He gets to fly to headquarters in a Ranger helicopter. When he lands, they put him in the cop car. They said, "Hey, you want to drive? Go ahead." They let him drive a cop car, flash the lights, blare the horn all over the parking lot. They put him on the motorcycle. He didn't want to do it. He wanted to be a motorcycle cop. He's like, "No, it doesn't have doors. I don't know if I can handle that." They took his family on a tour of the police department. Had a meeting with him called an emergency meeting. Said, "Chris, we need you in the meeting room." Gave him one of those Smokey the Bear hats that the troopers wear. Gave him a jacket. Goes in the meeting room. The head of the state police is there with a badge. They swore him in, and to this day, Chris Gracious is the one and only honorary state trooper in the state of Arizona. How do you think he felt at the end of the day? Felt great. So great, his doctor told his mom, his vitals have improved so much, you can sleep at home. He can sleep in his own bed tonight. Wow. Little things make a big difference, huh? So he goes home that night. Linda's phone rings. It's a police officer. He said, hey, after you guys left, we got to thinking, we can do better than that. So don't be alarmed. Tomorrow morning at 8:40, when you hear sirens, let your neighbors know there's no emergency. When you hear police sirens, that's just us coming to see you and Chris. I said, okay. So here's what they did. That night, after he left, they went to a place called John's Uniforms, which made all the highway patrol uniforms. They had two women. They convinced these two women to stay up all night and make one of those uniforms and alter it for an 8-year-old boy. These two women stayed up all night, delivered the uniform to the officers, and went over to his house with it. They show up from all different angles, sirens blaring, multiple cars, highway patrol motorcycles. Chris comes running out. He's got his gear on from the day before. They give him his uniform. And they said, you said you wanted to be a highway patrolman on a motorcycle. You didn't want to ride the bike yesterday, but you're in uniform now. You have a badge. This is getting real. So, and they had a little motorized motorcycle for him. Helmet. Remember Chips? Back in the 80s? That's when all this happened, so they've got all this gear for him set up. They put traffic cones in the driveway, and they gave him his motorcycle officer test in his driveway. Passes it with flying colors. They tell him, you're officially a motorcycle cop and a state trooper. But here's the thing. We have to order those wings. Motorcycle cops get little wings. Not sure why they're wings, but they do. We got to order them. They're made special. So we don't have that to give to you today. But we'll be back as soon as we have it. That's what happens. His vitals improve. He sleeps at home another night. Right? This is the power of human connection that we're talking about. I'd much rather be here with you than in Atlanta up on that screen. Because we can make a human connection person to person here. I think that's what matters. We're in this wired world where everything's so digital to a fault, and we're disconnected from others. His vitals improve. He's home for another night. A couple days later, takes a turn for the worse, ends up back in the hospital in a coma. Officer calls, we have Chris's wings, want to deliver him to you. Can I come over to the hospital? His mom said, yeah, sure. Officer Austin goes to the hospital room. Chris's uniform is hanging up on the wall next to his bed. He's in a coma, mom's sitting bedside. Officer goes over, and as he's pinning those wings on the kid's uniform, he wakes up from his coma. Tell me there isn't a higher purpose at work, a higher power, that this is the connection that we have with people. And I think each and every one of us, whether we realize it or not, does something very similar in a similar capacity every day, and we may not know it. So now what happened the next day was Chris passed away. But he got his wings, and he woke up, and he smiled, and he was there to see that. As I'm wrapping up, this gets better. And this is kind of my mantra. I'll do better than that. I'm not going to set the bar here. I'm going to set the bar here. I'll do better. So the officers go back, and they were shaken by this. And they call Chris's mom, and they said, we're meeting, we're talking about this. We decided we're going to, and his father lived in Illinois. And Chris is being buried in Illinois. So they decided We have a fallen officer. We want to give him proper burial. Head of the Arizona State Police orders 2 of his officers to travel to Illinois and give Chris the full policeman's funeral. Uniform, flag on the casket, flag presented to mom, motorcycle escort. So when they get off the airplane in Chicago at O'Hare, state police meet them, give them an escort to the county line. Sheriff's Department picks them up from there, gives them an escort into town. Local police escort these 2 Arizona State troopers to the funeral and take care of the ceremony. And on Chris's gravestone, it reads, Chris Gracious, 1972-1980, Arizona State Trooper. So what you just heard was a small group of people who decided, I'll do better than that, and I'll make a big difference. Little things make a big difference. How big? That's how the Make-A-Wish Foundation was founded, with that child. And after his funeral, those officers got around the table. I think as you look at what the PAL does here in Auburn, you guys are in the same, you're in this story too. You make a big difference. They decided, we don't want to just do that for Chris. We want to create an organization powered by purpose that gets to do that for other children just like Chris. Contact his mom with her blessing. A handful of 5 people founded the Make-A-Wish Foundation in Phoenix, Arizona, with $15 donated from local grocer. $15. 82 chapters across the United States. It's an international organization. Every 38 minutes, I've probably been talking for about 38 minutes. Every 38 minutes on this planet, a wish is granted. And then it all started with one person saying, I'll do better than that. I'm powered by purpose. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't even realize it'd be appreciated, but he knew it was the right thing. So what I'm going to ask you to do when you leave here, you're going to take a lot of notes from the whole day. You're going to be figuring out, trying to sort out what you ought to do and where you ought to get started. I would argue, forget the notes. Forget the notes. Start right here. What's the right thing to do in your heart? They didn't form a committee. You think we could pick them up with a helicopter? They actually said if the chief doesn't let us take the helicopter, we'll go rent one. The head of the Arizona Highway Patrol didn't say, you know what, that kind of thing's not in the budget, or that could be a liability issue if we let them drive the cop car. How often do we rule stuff out in our department, in our organization, because it's, quote, not in the budget? But hell, it's the right thing to do. Go do it. Find a way to make it happen. So that's what I'm challenging you here to do when you leave here. Make that your mantra. I'll do better than that. Bar set here, we're going to put it here. Right? You guys have been a great audience. I'm going to stick around for the afternoon. Thank you so much. You are powered by purpose.